See if people online, if you can hear me okay, you'll just maybe type in the chat box. Just a couple of you don't have to respond necessarily. Or your mics are muted online, otherwise you hear lots of fun things. Sometimes they make us laugh, but they're not always appropriate. So I've got a few people in the room. We have a lot of people online, it looks like. I figured since we shortened the meeting that most of you would participate online, and you probably were like, is this meeting even happening? So glad you were able to today. Honestly, today is kind of catch Jennifer day so that we can move forward knowing that Jeannie may or may not come back, and so we need to have kind of an action plan in place. And so ultimately today I'll give you some updates on things that I think you want to know. We'll open the floor, welcome, to questions about things that you're interested in that I don't cover. And I'll tell you what I know, and if I don't know enough, I'll investigate and get some information to you. And then I also want to take the opportunity that why I have all of you to learn about what your needs are and how we can support from the state level within the mentoring supports that you're already providing for both induction and mentoring. So thank you to the online folks for chiming in that you can hear me okay. And those in the room, welcome. I am Jennifer Thronson. I'm the Director of Teaching and Learning, and with Jeannie being out indefinitely, I wanted to personally say thank you for your patience as this happened shortly, and I was like, oh, we have a full day meeting in 2 days. So thank you for your patience as I emailed rapidly to lots of emails yesterday. Some people are probably like, who is this person? So thank you for your patience as I kind of come into this space and try and figure things out. So just kind of basics for today. Honestly, really going to learn a lot from you all. Share some things about what I anticipate is in your space, and then also allow you to ask questions about things that you want to know. It is legislative session, so there's kind of some things going on the Hill as well, but really what's relevant to you, and then take some time today to have you discuss and share things that you're interested in that the state can help provide or support you in the work that you're doing. So here we go. This is it's a very light agenda, because really my intentions in an hour and a half are to give you some basic updates and then get a lot of information from you about what your needs are, so that as I take on this role for the next bit until either Jeannie returns or we hire someone new, that we'll have a vision moving forward of what those needs are. So a couple of places that we'll kind of start today are the mentor modules and an update on the status of those. And I've asked Jana Neville, who's online, to kind of share out on that. We'll have a kind of a session this weekend that they'll finish up those modules, and then we'll need some people to spend some time reviewing and giving us feedback on those modules, but they will be coming out soon, which is great. The team's been working really hard on those, and they're coming to fruition after a kind of a long stall period, as some of you are aware, I'm sure, so we'll get those done. And then I'll give you an update on the engagement and exit survey and where we are with that, with the pilots, as well as kind of moving into it is a mandatory requirement for all LEAs to participate. We've had a number already kind of engage in piloting the survey at this point. And then ultimately I'd like to get feedback from you in terms of a needs assessment. What are the things that are kind of burning in your realms of influence and that you could use state level supports or resources or work groups around, so that we can continue to move the work forward. So any questions about the agenda as proposed, and then I will also be asking you for items you would like proposed on the agenda for today. Knowing we have an hour and a half, we can't get into too much meat. Jeannie did email me and say there was a couple LEAs that we're going to potentially present. I'm going to just say thank you, but I'm not ready for that. And so I think it was Nebo and Tooele. I really do appreciate that you probably were asked to do something today, but due to the changes, I'm just going to have us hold on that and potentially have you do that with us in I believe our May meeting. And so that's kind of where we are. I apologize for not knowing what you all know, but you're going to catch me up today. It's going to be great. So let's start with mentor modules. Jana, do you want to try and see if your mic will work and see if you'd be willing to give us an update from your perspective, and I'll be doing it.
Okay. Can you hear me at all?
We can hear you and see you, so thank you for being dressed appropriately.
It's always a challenge. It's a challenge.
Okay,
So, let's see. I think I know how to share a document, which I had opened earlier.
Let me give you rights so that you can. 1 second. Yes. Sure.
Okay.
So Jana Neville is going to be sharing with us this morning. She's from Washington County School District, and she's been helping with the mentor modules. There's a team, I want to say 8 to 9 people kind of working on that. And maybe it's working. Jana, you got control?
Okay. Yeah, I'm not as in control as everybody else, but I'll try it. Let's see. All we really tried to do was take some mentor competencies that everybody knows about, and there's 5 of them, and break those into separate modules. And then everybody on the team loaded any information they thought would be useful in training mentors about that subject. So I'm going to try to load this doc here. Can people see this document of mine?
Let's see if we can get you a little larger. It's pretty small. Can you do a full screen?
Yeah, it's just a basic Word doc. I'm sorry, a Drive
That'll
doc.
work. That's better. If you can't see, let's go ahead and move on up to the front row.
Yeah.
All right, we're good. Go ahead.
So what we did was we spent a couple of really great days together. And the first thing that we did was we tried to determine what general questions we would ask of any group. First of all, come to the meeting with questions about each of these things. What would be a mentor's general questions about pedagogy and content knowledge? What would be questions that every mentor would have about relationships? So that was the first thing that we did. My little section is adult learning that I'm working on with a partner. And these were the 3 questions that the team came up with. How is working with adults different than working with children? How does an educator, anyway, you can see them on there. They're just basic questions that help people kind of frame their reference. But then after that, everybody's going to follow the same outline. What are the considerations? What are the problems or questions we have? Activate their prior knowledge. What are the facts or the content we want them to know? How can they apply these things? And then how can you bring this knowledge into your actual practice? So that's the outline that everybody's going to follow, no matter what course they're working on. So far, we've just got all these different little files, folders, and we're just loading content in each of these based on what we think is important for a mentor to know. And that's where we are so far. Now the people that are in charge, there's 2 people in charge of each section, and they're going to curate all of the content, all of the docs, decide what's most important, add some more of their own, make it usable. And at the end of the project, there will be 5 modules on Canvas, I think. Each of those modules will have these same headings. They'll, of course, have different content, but anyone who is a mentor in the state of Utah ought to be able to click right into this Canvas course and see everything they need to about how to be a highly trained mentor. That's it.
All right, so, and I'll just add a couple of points. We are anticipating, the group is meeting Friday and Saturday. I know you're wishing you were part of that group if you're not, to spend your Saturdays with us, but to really finalize these modules and get the Canvas course built out. I'm anticipating putting all of the modules in one course so that when you complete it, there'll be like a certificate of completion. Another piece that I don't know, and Jana, maybe you can contribute, is potentially you take this course, but that's one component, and then there might be a micro-credential opportunity to demonstrate your competency in what you learned. So one thing that we're moving towards as the state is it's great to have knowledge, but the whole point of knowledge is to apply that knowledge in your setting. And so helping people to show that and have an opportunity to demonstrate that they are really proficient in that area, and to have kind of that micro-credential to represent their knowledge and skill. And so I could see that after they complete this module, they could use that to then kind of take that knowledge and apply it in their setting. And so that might be a place for this group to also consider as a micro-credential and mentoring. That this particular piece is the learning that could lead into a micro-credential. Some of your folks may be able to micro-credential and ultimately demonstrate competency without taking the modules potentially as well. So there's some opportunity there to allow people that have been in the field, probably such as yourselves, that don't necessarily need to go through the modules to show that they are ready to be a mentor, but have the competency to do that. And that's where a micro-credential could be a nice kind of coupling to this system. And so this weekend, we'll hopefully finish up the content. Some of the proposed next steps would be to have people review the content. One, just for functionality. Does it work? Does it do what it's supposed to? But two, any feedback so that before we release it more widely to the field, that somebody's looked at it. Because we learn things anytime someone goes into a course that you think you got everything figured out and then the link is broken or this page doesn't work. You've all had this experience. So we'll kind of do a soft release. If you're interested in being one of those soft release people to kind of review the content and give us feedback, if you want to just email me, I'd be happy to invite you to the course prior to its release, so that you could give us feedback in a meaningful way that allows us to prevent some predicted failures that come with any project that we do. So feel free, if that is something you're interested in, to just email me, and then we'll do a soft release, get some feedback, and then we'll do a full statewide release of the modules. We're kind of on a timeline of this should have been done last year, so it will be a kind of quick turnaround, as I'm sure you all are aware. We really can't take any more time, hence why we are pushing forward with meeting this weekend, even though I have no idea what we're doing. The group is fine. They'll know what they're doing and we'll be okay. I know how to run a Canvas module, so if nothing else, I'll come with that skill set. So I think question over here, I saw movement. Yes. Oh, good question. So emailing is Jennifer.Thronson, and that is THRONDSEN @schools.utah.gov. I'll type in the chat box for those of you online. So Jennifer.Thronson @schools.utah.gov. But I can give you my card after for those of you in the room, and you can have it. I am the director of teaching and learning, so if nothing else, you can go for it. So that's kind of some anticipated next steps for this particular release. The team, from what I've heard, has been doing great things. Do we have to use the USB remain? You do not have to use the mentor training that we established from code. We're just required to establish modules that can be used. So basically model ones that others can use. But if you have materials that you're already really happy with what we have, you're welcome to use those. There's nothing mandating that you use these modules. So that was a question online, just for the sake of the group. Okay, any questions either in the room or online with respect to the modules? Jane, can you mute your mic? I think maybe it's you. Somebody's on. Looks like I've got a few people on. Janet is muted, but if you just check your mics and make sure they're off. Otherwise, I'm going to try and do something. That mutes us, so we'll mute that one because that one's our online sound. That helped at least. No more typing in the background. All right, I think we muted everyone. Can the people online still hear me though? Because sometimes I mute myself and then it doesn't work. Okay, we can still hear us, we're good. All right, so continuing on, next step would be the engagement survey. How familiar, I'm gonna just stock take from the 8 people in the room. How familiar are you with this legislation and what we're asked to do? Survey, feeling pretty good. So if you'll give me a 0, like I have no idea what you're talking about, a 5, like, yep, totally get what we're talking about, and in between I'll do something else. Okay, we're feeling pretty good here. All right, so the engagement survey, it is developed, it is designed, it's in Qualtrics, which is our survey management system that is available at the state level, and we've made it available for all the LEAs this year. There is some legislation on the Hill to continue making that available for all LEAs moving forward. This was kind of a stopgap year of like, we'll cover it for now and hope that we can continue to offer that service. the engagement survey is not, there are certain questions that are mandatory that we've created, and then LEAs have the option to add additional questions that they would like to inquire with their staff, but the question set from us is required. And the reason for that is so that we can have standardized data across the state and be able to report to the legislature on what are the reasons people are staying in the field, leaving the field, and kind of learn from what's going well and where we can improve to improve teacher retention and potentially recruitment in some ways. So that's kind of the engagement survey. We've piloted it. I believe there's 81 LEAs that have signed up to pilot at this point. The official mandatory survey administration will be in April, so you'll see a release coming. If you haven't chosen to kind of opt yourselves in, you will be opted in April. And so I'll send out more information to this group as we get closer to those dates. If you have any of you attended the training from Qualtrics and our team to kind of learn how to use it? Okay. If that's of interest, they'll probably have some more Qualtrics training. Most of that's been for your HR folks that are kind of required to help administer, especially the exit survey. So when people leave the field, you're required to try and give them this survey. Some of your teachers will say, I'm leaving, leave me alone. We're not going to force that issue, but the goal is to learn from why are people leaving so that we can look at, from a legislative perspective and a state board perspective, what are some strategies that we can employ to help people stay in the field. And so the exit survey is something that will be administered whenever a teacher leaves. The engagement survey will be administered every other year. So this will be the first year, and then we'll take a year off, and they'll do the school climate survey, and they'll kind of alternate between these two mandatory surveys over the years. And so we'll use the data to kind of inform and share out with this group in particular, as well as others, of what we're kind of gathering. Each LEA will have their own local data to look at, and then we only have a state level view. So we don't drill down into the LEA level data. It's really, what does this mean for the state? And then we'll report to Education Interim this fall on the results of the survey so that they can kind of understand where our teachers are in terms of what's keeping them engaged, what are some of the struggles. In past surveys that we've done, one of the big struggles that is where you're in is support. Most teachers don't feel like they have enough support to be successful in the job, and so that is an opportunity to say, well, what are supports in education? Mentoring would be one, coaching is another, that could help teachers feel more successful in their roles. So hoping to get a lot out of that. And the fact that we've had over half of the LEAs already kind of opt in is great to do the pilot, but officially it'll roll out in April and be required of every teacher to participate in, which there is some leadership components to be thoughtful of that they ask a lot about their building principle. And so some of our LEAs might be a little more cautious about that. If you have one school versus 29 schools, it really can give you some information about feelings about the leadership system. So if you're in a charter school, there is going to be a little bit more finite detail about the leader because there's not as much data flowing in as if you're in a school district with multiple schools. Just joined us. Solve our problems. You guys, I have seen all kinds of things on this web. We had one lady one time painting the wall. So just know when you're online, it could be an adventure at any moment. I'm muted on entry, so hopefully we can avoid this moving forward. So that's kind of where we are in the engagement survey. Do we have any questions for the group? Feeling good about the engagement survey? Any concerns that you've heard from the field that maybe we need to address from a communication standpoint? In the pilot LEAs that have tried it already that you know of? Not aware if you're in the pilot? Okay. That might be some information I can get for you if you have participated, because it'd be interesting data for yourselves to look into and see what your teachers are saying about their work, because it does ask some information about how many years of teaching, so you guys could really look at those first few years and in terms of induction, what are those teachers needing that might help inform your work. So I'll see if I can get a list. I'll make myself a note right now of which LEAs have piloted, so that if you're interested, And generally, it's your HR directors that have been kind of our main point of contact on this. So those would be the people you would go to see the data. And they should be able to produce a report to kind of share it with you.
At the conclusion of those surveys, how to who are the results?
Yeah, so the results are given back to the kind of whoever is administrating your survey, which is generally like the HR director in your LEA. And LEA, sorry, acronyms, Local Education Agency, I use it way too often, but it's a school district or charter. It's just shorter than school district or charter. So that's the primary person. That person can give other people access to it. There's no regulations. There's a little regulation in code, or not code, but in policy of, we're trying to protect teachers. It is anonymous. It's not meant to be identifiable. But if you have a small N size, it can get real identifiable real quick. If you only have one new teacher in a school of 5 teachers, it gets really not anonymous real quickly. And so in those smaller LEAs, we have a little bit more privacy in place. But if you're in a large LEA, there's nothing that's distinguishable once you start getting at that aggregate level of data. So which LEA are you with by chance?
Grand County.
Okay, yeah, one of the small ones, right? So you have one elementary, and so that's gonna be a little more easy to drill down to a teacher. So if they leave it at the aggregate level of new teachers that's across your high school, middle school, and elementary, it's probably safe and they can share it. But there is some language in the board rule that says you have to be thoughtful about who gets the data and to what level they get the data.
So it's not a public.
No, absolutely not. This is really meant to help inform your school district or charter about ways that they could support differently. The survey is really focused on things that are controllable. So we didn't ask questions about things you can't control very easily in LEAs. That doesn't mean the school district didn't ask questions about things that they wanted to know that maybe aren't controllable, but our question data set is very intentional the way it's designed. We worked with Qualtrics, who does human resources surveys all across the nation and the world, to help us develop those questions. So it's a pretty good survey, and the initial pilot folks have had positive outcomes from that. So if you are, I'll send out a list of which ones have participated, just if you're curious if your LEA has joined. You're welcome to just ask your HR director. It may be faster than waiting for me to get the list, but I don't know for that. I might be able to get it today and send it out to you. And that way, if it's been taken, you can start looking at the data, because I think you'll find some usefulness in your work as well, beyond what the legislation is kind of seeking to understand. So sometimes policy is actually great for us in terms of our work, and sometimes we're like, why are we doing these things? So in this case, I think there'll be some real benefit to the work. I will share my screen. And okay, so any other questions? I'm going to keep the chat box up, which is always a good challenge. Even though it's being considered an off year for the school climate survey, can LEAs have access to that? Is a question online. Yvonne, I'm not sure if the school climate survey is as far along as the engagement survey, but I can ask and let you all know. You're welcome to administer them beyond the minimum expectations. The minimum expectation is every other year. These are administered. If schools want to administer the engagement or the climate survey outside of the every other year, you have that flexibility. The expectation from the state is that you have to give it every other year, but LEAs are welcome to give it more frequently. We have to be careful with survey burnout. We want people taking the surveys, and hence why even as we got both of these surveys at the same time said, can we just alternate? Because to give teachers 2 surveys, and the engagement survey is only 5 to 8 minutes long, so it's not super lengthy. It shouldn't be a huge demand on teachers. The expectation is it's done during the school day, like in a meeting, so that teachers aren't being asked to do it outside of the school day, that it's a paid part of their time. So whether that's in a staff meeting or a PLC or whatever your structures look like, the intention is not to burden the teachers with this additional data collection, but to allow them to take it during their paid time. So just keep that in mind as you guys think about administration and developing that. Climate. Okay, and I'll send out some updates with anything that comes up today within the next couple of days so that we can follow up on these ideas and questions. Okay, so that is engagement survey. I will get you more details as I kind of get caught up on this. it's been led by Sarah Young in our department as well as some of our data and statistics folks. And I've been meeting with them to kind of get caught up to speed, but we definitely have a good influx of people that just opted in and said, we'll try it out. But it's working through the kinks of anytime you adopt a new system, so. All right, let's go ahead and open up for any agenda items that you all would like to posit to the group that might need to happen for discussion for the benefit of your own needs and wants. And then we're going to move into gathering a kind of prioritized list of what you would need and want in your roles in the schools and districts that you serve. So if there are any agenda items that you would like or have questions about, you've heard rumors. I had a rumor session in my curriculum directors meeting yesterday. I was like, what rumors do you want me to dispel or confirm? Because it happens. Like, you hear things, you're like, is the state doing this? Or is the legislature doing this? And so happy to answer anything that maybe is in the rumor mill that you've heard that you're like, what about this? Okay, we've got someone online maybe. Oh, no.
That's me, Jen. Is that okay?
Yes, go ahead.
One of the things we talked about maybe at the last meeting was meeting together in May and putting together that instructional playbook. Is that still interesting to people?
Okay, good question. Pause it to the group.
Yes.
I hear one yes. Do I have a second? I have a nod over on the left. We've got a yes online. Let me open up the chat so you guys can see each other's chat as well. I think it's all marked privately for some reason at this point. So 1 second. Choosing to send them just to me. Yes, please. So, okay, I can add that to the next one. I have no idea what that means. I'm not gonna lie. So does someone want to inform me what an instructional playbook is?
Jenna was using Jim Knight's books to make an instructional playbook, and she had done that in St. George, so she was going to kind of take us through that process.
Okay.
Is what I understood.
Okay, and have you guys create more of a state level?
No, I think for our own LEAs.
Okay, just kind of walk you through the process so you could do your own.
We can do it.
Okay. Jan, are you still willing to help with that?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Sorry. I keep muting and unmuting myself. It's counterintuitive. Sorry. We really talked about it two different ways. We were going to use the Utah State created instructional strategies and create our state instructional playbook, or we were just going to show people how we did it so they could do it on their own. So either way is fine with me. Jeannie asked me to work on it for our May meeting, and I can do that, and I'm happy to do it in whatever way people want. So that's a good question.
Janet, will you send me a copy of what you've created? And then we've got some stuff going on in like the high leverage practices space that we've identified 5 top instructional strategies for the state recently in a different group, and I don't know how these might overlap. We're working on things like scaffolding, engagement, classroom management, using data to drive instruction, and there's one more that I'm forgetting. And so I don't know if there's overlap or if they're completely disconnected. But that
there will be some overlap, but that's a really good point. Why would we create a big giant document of things that everybody hasn't decided together are the most useful practices? That's what we want to do.
Okay.
So I will. I'll send it to you.
It's connecting the work that we're doing in other spaces to what you guys are doing. So just for context for this group, we have a group of higher education, school district and charter folks, and then USBE staff that are working together to curate resources around the Utah's high leverage practices. So if you're not familiar with high leverage practices, they come from Teaching Works and Deborah Ball's work out of Michigan. And the Center for Exceptional Children has created their own. So there's 2 groups. Teaching Works has 19 high leverage practices. CEC, I think, has 25, so across the two you have 44. There is some overlap, but we took the 44 and surveyed stakeholders and got down to the top 5 for Utah that we are going to focus on in both teacher preparation and in the instructional supports we provide through professional learning at the state. So for example, this summer we have this Standards Implementation Institute coming that will be doing 7 weeks across the state with professional learning in the core content areas, from health to PE to ELA, math, science, and beyond. And ultimately, we picked one of the pedagogical of the high leverage practices to focus on, which will be scaffolding. So knowing that our equity gaps are large and that some students are not having equal access to core instruction, our goal this summer is to provide teachers with strategies of how to scaffold the content so that all students have access to core instruction. Given scaffolding would be a great way to help close the equity gaps. And so that high leverage practice is then being embedded into our professional learning opportunities to kind of create this systems approach. We are also putting into rule the high leverage practices that teacher preparation, those same 5, have to prepare teachers to demonstrate competency in those 5 high leverage practices as part of their route to licensure. So we're trying to make this more integrated system so that in-service and pre-service have these kind of connecting points. There's obviously foundational knowledge when you're in pre-service versus the more advanced practice that we would experience in service. But knowing that our incoming teachers are coming with some basics in the 5 areas allows us to build upon those areas moving forward. And so I'm not sure what the playbook you've done, Jana, but there might be some great connections and there might be some overlaps.
Well, it'd be super easy to take those 5 instructional practices and use them as our models for creating an instructional playbook. We could do it in one day. And then people who had participated can now transfer that process to their own districts and create their own playbook for more practices they want to add.
Okay. Well, let's talk more. If you'll send me a copy, I'm making an action item for you that I'll send out in the email for everyone. And then we can make some decisions about next time. But if that's something the group would like to continue to focus on, I'd be happy to help facilitate that. So Cammie, I'll send you guys a list of the top 5 that we landed on, top 5 HLPs, so that you'll have the articulated language in the follow-up email. So I can pull them up real fast though, so you guys can kind of see. Right list. We started with 8 and then we got down to 5. Jana, can you see my screen? Is it showing what I'm showing? It's not anymore.
No, it's not.
Helps if I do my own job here. Here we go. Okay.
No. There we go.
Blow this up a little. So these are the top 5 that we landed on as a state through stakeholder feedback. We have really went out and kind of hit a system to try and understand what would be most relevant and useful. So the first one is really around that collective efficacy idea that when teachers work together to look at data to drive instruction, that we see changes in practice as well as student learning increases. And so you've got the data component along with the collaboration of collaborating with professionals through that professional learning community. 2 is use strategies to promote active student engagement. Many of you are probably in classrooms on a frequent basis and seeing the teacher leading the work and not a lot of student engagement or practice opportunities. And so we really want to increase that. Our student advisory council has asked to be more engaged in their classes. They're like, the teacher just talks at us but never lets us kind of process and develop our own ideas and connect ideas. And that is something, as we go out and do visits for our Title III visits, something we're also seeing as professionals and something you're probably noticing as well. So some strategies to promote active student engagement and what that looks like. Systematically designing instruction toward a specific learning goal, so being really intentional about our learning intentions and what that can look like. We embedded a couple of key strategies, which one is using explicit instruction when it makes sense. We just created a document that we're working on making pretty at this point on what are the differences between explicit instruction and inquiry-based instruction and when do you use which one. Because there's often this battle between content areas of like, oh, inquiry only and or explicit only, and it's really both. It depends on where the student is in the learning cycle and what we're trying to accomplish. And so we're really trying to help the field understand the differences and when you employ which strategy over the other. Because there's opportunities for both, but if you've looked at the data around like problem-based learning, most of the time we employ that strategy too early and it doesn't have great student learning outcomes. You have to have some basic understanding before you can engage in a problem to be able to bring something to it. And so trying to help teachers better understand that. So we'll have a supporting document for explicit instruction versus inquiry, and it's not really versus because they should both be employed. It's just the opportunity, what phase of learning is the student in? Are they in kind of that basic kind of knowledge gaining, or are they trying to analyze and apply their thinking? And then the scaffolding that I talked about, that's our main focus this year for our summer institute, is to really help teachers know how to scaffold for instruction. The next one is feedback. So this is one, teachers need to know what they're teaching, what the learning looks like to be successful, and communicate that to students so that students can self-evaluate their own work and give that feedback. So kind of twofold, teachers need to give the feedback so kids can continue to learn, but students also need to learn how to look at their own work and give themselves feedback to know where they are in the learning process. And then the last one is really around classroom management, so establish a consistent, organized, and respectful learning environment. So those are kind of the pieces that we've found, and the reason we landed on those is no matter what content I teach, those things are important. It doesn't matter if I'm a CTE teacher or a kindergarten teacher. If I don't have consistent routines, something can go very awry in woodshop or kindergarten on the carpet. And so we try to pick the high leverage practices that were really universal to the field, knowing that these are going to be the ones that you see for the next several years. There are obviously more high leverage practices than just these, so we don't want people to think these are the only things we have to ever have to employ, but we have to focus the work, otherwise it's just too much. And so we'll start with these 5 and kind of work our way up. Currently that group is meeting next week to finish curating the resources and start figuring out how do we share this, what does that look like? And so we'll most likely build Canvas modules that go through each one of these 5 HLPs so that teachers who want to learn more about what they are have kind of this self-guided approach. And then we'll build micro-credentials that people can demonstrate competency in the 5 HLPs to show that they do have these really high leverage practice. And a high leverage practice, all that really means is that there's an evidence base that it's highly effective when you use these practices to improve student learning. As you all have seen in your work as mentors, teachers that don't have classroom management, they might be really good at their content, but without management, it just doesn't come together. And so it's this coupling effect of I need high quality instruction with engagement and feedback and management skills, and trying to bring all those together. And so hopefully this will help. Yeah.
Is there going to be a crosswalk, or maybe not as connected as I think, between?
Yes, so we have that already done, so we'll release that as part of this work. There is some great overlap across those. I do anticipate that we'll be updating the teacher standards in the next couple of years. They're getting a little outdated at this point. It's been several years, but I believe there's some national work going on to update standards, so we hate to get ahead of the national work because then you end up going, oh, those are so much better than ours. So we'll probably see in a couple of years, but right now we did make a crosswalk between the two. And then our higher education folks have tools that they use to observe teachers, and they've made a crosswalk of how to get these and added these HLPs to that work if they weren't already present in their tool. So this really should be a unifying systems approach that our incoming teachers as well as our currently practicing teachers can have that. So those are the 5, and I'm just trying to read through the comments right now. Carmen, if you want to share your playbook as well, I'd be happy to take a look. It's always interesting to see how people put things together. Will these modules or micro-credentials be required for moving an associate teacher to professional status? That is not our intention. This is really for any teacher to really advance their practice. So if I don't have a strong skill set in, it might be a good one, feedback, providing both positive and constructive feedback, I can go learn what that is, I can practice it, and then if I ultimately want to demonstrate, I am good at this now, I can do the micro-credential. So it's really more of a professional learning opportunity for teachers to continue to extend their skill set at their own regard. There's no mandates other than teacher preparation has to teach these things. There's nothing at the in-service level that is required at this time, and we're not anticipating require anything. Yeah, that Jana was saying, if you do all the work of collecting resources, we may not even need an instructional playbook. And not knowing what the playbook is, sure, it is potential. Our job right now as the team is just curating those resources. There's a lot out there because different organizations have kind of gravitated to these high leverage practices and put out videos and tools and resources around these that we're just trying to curate, and then we'll build out additional resources that's needed if there's stuff not available. But ultimately, our staff will kind of build these out with people to kind of help get this going in the long run. So that's kind of where we are with HLPs. Not that I anticipated having that conversation, but it's great. It works in really well with the work that you guys are doing. What other things might be of interest to you today in this moment? Yeah.
Do you know if they've decided exactly which pedagogy assessment
For the teachers?
for associate?
So we have not identified it at this point for the associate license. So there's only a few really out there. So you've got the EdTPA and the PPAT, which the teacher preparation programs are using. So likely most people will go with those. We had one LEA consider making their own. I'll tell you, the higher education institutes thought they could do that too, and then they all have said, never mind. I don't see a school district or charter, because it has to be a really reliable and valid assessment, and that takes a few years to be able to get to. So people could work towards that, but to come out the gate of a reliable, valid tool is really hard to do. So EdTPA and the PPAT are the two the universities will be using, and so likely that our charters and school districts that are going to run their own preparation program will have something similar. There is legislation to add to pre-service for elementary, special education, and early childhood teachers a science of reading test that they would have to pass to earn a professional license, because we are sending too many people out to teaching the early years without the adequate skills and knowledge. And so the first couple of years, we're going to put that onus on the higher education institutions, that if teachers aren't passing, that's on them to improve their programs, and they are well prepared for that. They get that they may have to make adjustments. They've actually been very supportive in higher education programs. And then after a couple of years, allowing the higher education institutes to improve their preparation for teachers in the science of reading, then we will see the onus be on the teacher, because now that we have programs that are producing teachers that on the whole are ready, if a teacher doesn't have that knowledge, it becomes their issue to address. And so we'll kind of have this transitionary plan if the legislation on the Hill goes through. We have 1 and 2 kids reading at grade level in the state, so we need better prepared teachers, and part of that is the in-service or the pre-service teachers coming in and the knowledge they're coming with. So that will be an additional assessment we anticipate coming if the legislation passes this session. It's looking like it will, and higher education is supportive. They were just really worried when we were like, it's gonna be on the teacher. They're like, it's on us the first few years. I'm like, I love that you're saying that. Like, I'll take that as a win of they know that if teachers aren't passing, that it comes down to the program they're providing, rather than putting that on the teachers solely. So we'll collect data and help inform their programs to improve the teachers you end up working with in induction, coming out better prepared to teach some of our youngest readers how to read. So, other questions?
Give us some information on, my principal asked me to, on the new licensing process.
Sure.
Is there a checklist, an organizational chart
It's a
for
good
the
time.
different?
So the question is around licensing, and hopefully you guys can hear online. So for your folks that are coming not out of a traditional preparation program, is that what we're talking about?
Everything.
Okay. So the traditional preparation programs will embed like the pedagogical assessment and all of that. So they'll come out with their associates and kind of work their way through. Or at least they'll get to their professional if they do all those things. It's really your ARLs and your APTs that our rule changes July 1, and so that route is gone in terms of the old way. The new way is to either go through a teacher preparation like a traditional program, or your school district or charter offers your own teacher preparation program. And so there's an application available for LEAs to apply and say, we're gonna run our own, and here's what that looks like. Because it's a transition, as people have kind of gotten to the point of trying to enact what this is gonna look like in 4 months, there's been a little concern brought that, whoa, this is really big. For a small school district to run their own teacher preparation program is a big lift. And so currently our focus is on get the pedagogical components done first. In this first year of the new license is to really focus on getting those done. So we've got the modules being built out. Those should be released, I believe, in March for those 4 key modules: ethics, special education law, classroom management, and there's one other one that I can't remember. But those will be built out and I believe released in early March, so that people can start getting the pedagogical components, doing whatever test you guys land on for the pedagogical performance assessment, so the EdTPA or the PPAT most likely. Those pieces are things to focus on moving forward. The content is what's coming to be the biggest rub. So when people said, hey, we can handle the pedagogy, we can get our teachers through that. SUU is running a great program. If you guys need help, they're going to run a lot of the pedagogy stuff themselves. But from a content perspective, I have a teacher coming in that doesn't have a bachelor's in it. What do they have to do? Well, most likely they have to earn the endorsement, right? And so some of our endorsements are 30 credits. To tell a new hire that you're bringing on, you get to go to school for the next 3 years to earn 30 credits might not be the biggest win for anyone. So we are going to be looking at our own work internally to think about what is an endorsement, what does it qualify you to do, and probably change some of our practice. And also consider demonstrating competency in certain areas, that you don't necessarily have to take all these courses to show that you're content ready, but maybe your students are showing that they're doing well on student assessments. You've got good learning outcome data, your observations and evaluations are stellar. Those kinds of things might also play into being qualified to teach a particular content area versus just course requirements. So for example, I looked at the English endorsement, and I think it's 30 credits or so, or 27, somewhere high like that. And you look at the courses and you go, is that really required to teach English? Do I have to have 2 of this class and 2 of this class and 2 of this class to really make me a qualified English teacher? We're questioning that at this point to start thinking about how do we support LEAs, as well as teachers that we obviously have an influx that we need to continue to allow teachers who aren't traditionally prepared, but what does that look like? So if you have a bachelor's degree in the area and you take the content test, you're in, right? Like I have an English major, I take the English praxis, I pass it, I'm qualified. But if I'm coming in with a background in mathematics and I want to teach English, that degree is not going to help me, right? I need to pass the content test, but I also have to go earn the endorsement is kind of how it works right now. And so we're trying to look at how that might change to be more receptive to the field. And additionally, our endorsements don't always show that they impact student learning in a positive way. So just because I'm an endorsed teacher doesn't mean I have any better learning outcomes than a teacher who's not endorsed in a few of the endorsements we've looked at. We're looking at a few more to see if that changes depending on the endorsement or the structure of the endorsement. But content alone is not improving student learning outcomes. And ultimately, what we're about is student learning. And so how do we start to kind of look at our work differently of what that looks like? So how we've kind of guided the LEAs at this point, and more communication is coming out, is focus on pedagogy this year, really work on them getting those pedagogical components down, and then we will release revised qualifications for the content part of teaching. Given what, as we start to look, we might need to change the cut scores for the assessments. We might need to change the assessments. There are different things that will be considered. So we're kind of telling people focus on pedagogy, and over the next year we'll come out with some updated information around content that will be more transferable. We are going to amend the rule next month to go from 2 years of, that's how long you get with a 1-year potential extension, to a 3-year with a 1 year. So you have up to 4 years to kind of earn your license. Currently the field is feeling like 2 years is too short, even with the 1 year kind of extension, that 3 years feels more comfortable with a 4th year as needed. And so we'll be amending the rule to address that concern. Knowing this is all new, you set up hoping with the best, and then when people actually go to implementation, you learn that there's some issues that we want to encounter and support as we move the work forward. So, okay, yes, so true, Lisa. We'll be talking with our math folks about that. She was making a comment of, if you said math, people would be screaming if I said, do I need all those courses for my endorsement? So like math level 4, right? You have to have all these leveled endorsements. Well, we have no data that says if I have a level 4 endorsement, I'm a better math teacher, right? Because everybody has to have a level 4 that's teaching those math. And so is equal student learning coming from those teachers? No. So we can't say content alone is the only thing. That pedagogical component is really important too. And so at this point, it's more of a transition than what we were expecting. I think we were hoping to go full out, go for it, as people have tried to figure out where would I even go to get these courses offered after school hours, via distance, we don't have the opportunities available in the state for an area like yours to be able to get those classes outside of the school day, plus putting that burden on a new teacher of, please go take 30 credits in the next 2 years, seemed a little rough.
So the I can tell her that.
So for right now, they can still go in the old pathways or transfer to the new pathway. So until July 1, all pathways are open.
But she hasn't even applied yet,
She-
right?
yeah, she
No,
can
she
apply
hasn't. She
now.
hasn't
Yeah, so she's does the new,
And
she
November
does the
1
new
was the
system.
deadline.
Because ARL said they weren't accepting one after November first.
Okay.
Which March 1 is what we were told the application was gonna be available.
Yes, which we are still hopeful for, but we need to change board rule in a couple of ways. So,
That too.
yeah,
Only
so
if you've been applied and denied.
way to go, everyone. Teamwork. So there is an application. Basically, right now, they're reviewing things and then saying, we'll get you a letter that says you'll be licensed. But until July 1, we can't actually issue any licenses. So definitely contact our licensing folks. There are ways in right now. What your LEA decides in terms of preparation for that teacher would be kind of up to them if they want to apply. So the applications at this point, we are still queuing for March 2nd. The trick is we need to amend board rule, and that would affect the application. So we have some kind of dissonance to work through, but we don't want to hold out too much longer because people need to get moving. And so we're kind of in an awkward space of we need to amend board rule, but board meeting isn't until the middle of March, and then it has to go to full board in April, which delays everything. So we're trying to find a happy medium of, okay, we're hoping that we can change board rule in this way, but right now the application has to look like this. And maybe don't fill out question number 5 until April. I mean, those are the kinds of coaching we're probably gonna have to give at this point. So be flexible with us, be patient, and ask questions. I think we got a lot of pushback about 3 weeks ago, the first week of session, and we had no idea. No one had talked to us, and so they'd contacted a couple legislators, and they're like, well, we'll just write. We're like, oh, we don't need law. We're okay. We're happy to work with people and make this work. And so they've kind of backed off and allowed us to make some adjustments, and I think we're ready for that. Let's see. Holidays. Well, you're welcome. I'm a little too transparent at times. You will learn this about me. I'm pretty direct. Can people take the Praxis 2 and have it count until July 1? That's the content praxis, right? They're still required at this point, so yes, you can take it and it'll count as far as I know. You're shaking your head.
It was up to the LEA
Yeah,
and they
and
didn't
LEAs
have to
aren't
take
doing
it
it.
for this year.
Yeah,
The
this
ones
is
who had
clarified.
Oh,
become
I
a
see.
level 2 normally, they
Yes.
didn't have to take it.
Right, because you're kind of grandfathered in.
Yes.
But it's not the content praxis I thought were
No,
still required
The
for
content
secondary.
is still.
But it's the
required to
praxis
get in.
2, I think they're
Two.
talking about,
Yeah,
not
yeah.
required.
Praxis 2 is not
PLT.
required.
Yeah, PLT.
PLT, not required.
PLT is out. You don't need to worry about that one at this point. That I'm clear. I get to catch up in all worlds, being the director, so. Yeah, the PLT is not required, so I
Unless you
would
have an
say
APT
not take
license.
it. Unless you have an APT license. You guys are so knowledgeable. I'm just gonna call you when I'm like, what about this? Like I said, being in teaching and learning, we have licensing, we have the content areas, and so my job is very broad, and you have specialists that attend to all of these things, so I know just enough to be dangerous and maybe wrong. So feel free to add in as we go.
So Jennifer, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself and your background?
Sure, absolutely. So, Kelly asked, it's Kelly, right?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure I recognize Teacher of the Year. So Jennifer Thronson, I have been as the director just for about the past year. It'll be a year in April, but I served at the state as the literacy coordinator for the past 5 years before that, over pre-K-12 literacy, and came from Canyon School District as the ELA specialist there and an instructional coach at one point. Worked in Alaska as the English language learner coordinator. Took our data from 25% of kids being proficient or obtaining proficiency to 75% in 2 years and sustained that in our third year. And then I was like, I want to go teach kids. So I went back in the classroom in the Title I school, used everything I'd learned as an ELL coordinator because I was not prepared. I was 25 when I was a district coordinator. And they hired me because they're like, oh, she has an ESL endorsement. Those didn't exist in Alaska. So they're like, she'll be great. Let's just say the learning curve was steep. Luckily, I learned quickly. And so we were able to really transform our student outcomes. I was a classroom teacher before that. I taught first grade for 5 years in Granite before heading to Alaska. And so I have my master's in math education, my doctorate in math education, although I was a state literacy coordinator, so I'm weird in lots of ways. I told people I did literacy during the day and math at night while I was in school. I have my reading, math, gifted, and ESL endorsements. You know, I like to learn. I'm like all of you that just continue to try and advance yourself and the knowledge that you have. I've been an adjunct professor for about 15 different courses. I don't know, I like school. That's why I'm here. So moving from literacy to the director, now over all of things like teacher preparation, licensing, and then the core content areas. So anything core from like health and PE to math and science is kind of in our wheelhouse, as well as digital teaching and learning, personalized and competency-based education, all of that kind of stuff is under my purview at this point. So anything else you're curious about, I'm happy to tell you about myself.
What took you to Alaska?
It pays really well. So if you, like my ex-husband and I were both teachers, so it was like we could go there and make basically another teacher salary working there. And so it was great that way. I had a daughter that was 15 months old at the time, and it was like, let's go experience a new place. And my uncle lived in Alaska, so we're like, at least we'll know someone. And we didn't see him as often as I would have expected. He only lived 20 minutes away, but you know how that is. You're like, it's a busy life, and you can stay busy, and it's cold in Alaska. So 6 months of winter it's really 8 months. It's rough. Like when I went to be a teacher, I'm like, I'm not sure I can teach in the dark, because you start school in the dark and you end in the dark during the winter. And so there's like 3 hours of sunlight in the middle of the day. I can't teach in the dark, surprisingly. And they would send the kids out to -20 for recess. So just now, here with 28 degrees as the rule, I'm like, my kids were out. 28 degrees was like springtime, so it was a different experience for sure. Other questions or things I can contribute? I love that you're willing to ask, Kelly, by the way. Yeah.
What are some of the things that you did to increase your ELL proficiency?
Yeah, one of the best things we did as to why we were able to change that data so quickly was we front-loaded for instruction. So we saw what the teacher was going to teach, and we would front-load the most core concepts so that the student had access to it before the teacher would teach it, so they'd have the language and kind of some exposure. What we found is our kids were more engaged because they actually had enough to participate, which then made them feel more confident, and so that kind of transformed them as learners. Because oftentimes as an English learner, there's a lot of stuff going on you don't understand, so you just kind of shut down, and because you're quiet, the teacher's like, great. It becomes another thing. We had a lot of teachers with bias in Alaska, and so we found teachers that were going to be willing to work with our English learners. Not all of our teachers were, and sadly, that's where we had to start in grouping them. So in elementary, instead of having like 2 kids in this class, 1 in this class, and 1 in this class, we'd put all 5 first graders in the same class, because as a teacher, if I have a quantity, I'm more likely to reach that quantity than if I had 1. You're just less likely to do some things just due to the demand. And so we started grouping them with teachers that we found easy to work with for an English learner, because we had a lot of bias that we needed to spend some time addressing while we met the needs of kids. But the front loading was probably the number one strategy that we used, because prior to me coming in, it was all over the place. It was like teddy bear press worksheets, let's do some vocab cards, and that wasn't really going to change outcomes. And so we would say, okay, what are you learning this week in your core basal program? Let's pull out the key phonics skills or whatever it is and front load that, so that the day before or the hour before they were getting the instruction, they had some front loading. And that seemed to be the biggest difference for our kids.
What language was most prevalent?
We had a lot of Russian, Ukrainian. So yes, okay. You can see Russia from Alaska. No, you can't. I was up there during the days of Sarah Palin, so it was an interesting time. And then we had Hmong, native languages due to the Alaska Native population, and some Spanish. So those were kind of our top few languages up there. So it was a little different. The Hmong population was probably, given kind of their refugee nature, most at risk in our state. But our Russian Ukrainian was definitely our biggest population. Because you had the PFD, which is the Permanent Fund based on gas, you got like $1,500 per person in your family. So our Russian families had like 11 kids. They'd come over and get a bunch of money just for living there. It's a hard environment to live in, so it was a nice benefit. But it's like living on an island. You drive 6 hours in any direction and you're still in Alaska. But not with the warm beaches. Okay, that's probably enough about me. Okay, perfect. Okay, so I'm just checking the comments to make sure I didn't get off too big. So yes, let's confirm PLT is optional except for APT, just confirming that fact. And then, yeah, the PLT is definitely easier than the performance assessments. The performance assessments really are about competency. So teachers are going to need more rigorous preparation to pass those and support from you all, honestly. If you're hiring people who didn't go through a traditional pathway, some of those people are going to be off and running, and then others are going to need a lot more support. And so once your district determines or charter determines which test, I would definitely encourage you to look at what are the things that are going to be measured so that you can help support your teachers. The PPAT and EdTPA, there's some similarities, but there's also some differences across the two tests of what teachers are kind of observed for. And so as your LEA picks, in your role, I would definitely start looking at what it assesses and what it observes so that you can support your new teachers in those areas so that they'll be successful in passing that performance assessment. Okay, yes. No, I love questions.
When you were talking about the thing at legislature, the science of reading test, and you said that higher ed is going to, what about our associate teachers? Will they do that too?
Yep.
So will we find something? What's going to be?
They're going to need the background, right? So for your associate teachers in elementary or early child positions or special education, they will be required to pass the assessment as well. And so thinking about that, we at the state level will produce some modules to help teachers kind of learn that knowledge. So one, if they didn't get it out of their teacher preparation program, they can go and try and get it this way. Two will be you guys just like through your PLCs and the professional learning you offer, like they need to learn how to teach reading. A lot of our teachers have realized they don't know as much as they need to know to teach reading. It's really easy for kids that pick it up. It's the struggling kids and that is expected to be a high percentage, honestly, that we have to do more explicit instruction on sounds and blending and all of those things that, for example, we looked at syllabi at teacher preparation. They spend a week on phonemic awareness. I'm going to tell you, phonemic awareness is very important, and a week, which is a 3-hour class, is insufficient for mastering that knowledge. And so we'll build out some modules to help people pass that.
You say that who will be required?
So basically, any elementary teacher.
Any elementary teacher. Okay.
Because
and
special education.
In elementary, not secondary.
Correct. Yep. So really focusing on making sure that if I am a special education teacher dealing with students that really struggle, I should have some depth of knowledge. And the foundations of reading tests that we're looking at is basic foundation knowledge. It's not being an advanced literacy person, but it's like, this is what I should know at a most basic level if I'm going to be a teacher of reading.
I include pre-K, yeah.
Pre-K? Yes, if they go for a license, yes. A lot of our pre-K teachers aren't licensed in the same way, but if they go for a license, they would have to pass that test.
Next question.
Yes.
We have a lot of, I would assume that a lot of us in school are going to be asked by our districts to help produce new policies to help with this. I think it would be a really good idea, maybe in May, maybe some drafts that our districts or LEAs are doing so that we can kind of get an idea of what other people are doing, because everybody has to do it. So it might be a really good time to not feel like you are just coming from scratch with something. And I'm sure HR directors are doing that too, but I know our HR director has only gone from one other district, and it was just about district-specific licenses. So it's going to be big undertaking. If we could work together.
Yeah, we'll benefit from the shared collaboration of it. Yeah, we can definitely put on the agenda. And so basically how I kind of function on an agenda is after this meeting, I'll send out a summary with the things I told you I'd send out and action items. And one of the action items in this case being proposed would be that you would bring a draft of any policy that you are crafting related to the associate license to kind of be shared and learned from, so that we can all kind of benefit from the collective good, that we're all doing this together, or at least learning from each other.
Yeah, I think professional and how mentoring is going to work. Like, being inspired.
So districts are mentoring for a professional license.
Okay.
All of them are
Oh,
gonna be-
a person that your HR person could reach out to is Shonda Moss. Because I've been working on a committee with her and they're piloting with some districts even, so I don't know if they could get in on that, and then they get help writing their plan and. Where's she?
She works
She's
here.
here. Okay.
She's one of our
Yeah.
specialists, Shonda Moss.
It's like SHAWNDA.
And I can ask her if she has any resources to share, and I can bring those in the May meeting as well. She is working with a few LEAs to kind of pilot all of this work, and would potentially have some. We have a model preparation program that we'll be releasing in March as well to try and show you what it could look like, based on probably you're on that committee. Yeah.
And
So-
the mentor thing that you mentioned is true, and we couldn't think of, like, to say that the alternate path mentor, couldn't think of another term because it's very different than just the provisional teacher mentor. So, but yes, and it is much more work. And in our district, we're thinking of assigning one of our coaches to do that. So, but we have a smaller number.
We do anticipate, we have a working group working on what are the needs of a new teacher who didn't come through teacher preparation versus a new teacher that came through teacher preparation. We have a work group kind of working on those and defining what are the skills that a mentor would want to kind of follow up with them on or give them support in. And so that should be released in the next, I think, couple of months as well. So we'll try and produce some things that might be helpful for you, because an alternately prepared teacher is going to have different needs than somebody who came from teacher preparation in your induction programs. And so we've got a work group working on that is producing some things. We're trying to also work on the clinical experience for pre-service teachers that are going through a traditional pathway. Right now, a lot of the teachers, when we called and interviewed, how do you select who gets a student teacher? The secretary? There's no intentional way. The intention of a student teacher is to go see a master teacher. That is not always the way this is being let out. And so we are trying to put in we're doing a pilot down with, I think it's Dixie State or Southern Utah, with the school district down there to kind of see what this looks like. If we are a little more intentional, how does that master teacher or student teacher relationship kind of work out? Rather than saying, oh, she's got a tough class this year, let's put in the student teacher, which is what's happening a lot, but putting them in the master classroom. And so hopefully some of that will also help for your traditionally prepared to be even better when they come in, because seeing a master teacher is very different than seeing a teacher who's struggling and they just want another body in there because it's a struggle point. Unfortunately, we don't always think about the impact of that on the new teacher, thinking that's what teaching looks like. So some struggle.
Looks like you have a question up there, but I have one more one.
Go ahead.
No, you can.
Oh, so looking at the Ed TPA, is it just for elementary ed teachers? I'm not sure.
I know secondaries that have done it.
I was gonna say, I don't
No,
think
it's for both.
Okay.
I know secondary.
If two confirmation in the room, it's for everyone. I was pretty sure, because I'm thinking UVU has been using it, and it's been for their whole program, so.
That's what Utah State and University of Utah,
Have chosen.
BYU are gonna use,
Okay.
yeah, so it's for both.
I think the other ones are doing the PPAT, but
Oh, yeah, sorry.
no worries.
Yeah, CPAT, all of them are
Westminster and Weaver and BYU were kind of the holdouts that were gonna design their own and then have decided to not design their own at this point. It's too much work, and I think that's what they all realized. They would love to do it, and it maybe over time they will, but initially, to kind of get going, it just makes more sense, so. Okay, anything else? Yeah,
So in our last meeting, Travis came and talked to us about all the licensing stuff, and he threw something out that there, about the 200 points to relicense versus the 100, and how there may be.
so the new rule, is it already there? It comes in March to the board, so I can send out a draft of it if you guys wanna take a look and give feedback. We did reduce to 100 points. It's a little more vague about what qualifies for earning your points, but teaching experience is no longer part of the point system. So just being in the classroom is being in the field is kind of an expectation, not a point value piece. So it's really the learning you do, if you help, with your building leadership team, if you provide professional learning, all of those ways are ways for you to earn points versus doing your job. And that's hence why the point value is lower, right? I mean, we still want people doing their job, but from a you're gonna renew your license, here's things that you would do that. So attending conferences, that kind of thing. And ultimately, we'll go through a very similar system of the principal will review and approve, and then if you get audited, then you would submit your documentation. So not any huge changes really. Micro-credentials will be another way for you to you can take those and earn them towards, because we'll have USB credit for those kinds of things. So it's expanding in small ways, but really pretty typical to what you've seen. So I'll make a note to send you a copy of the draft. I think it's 306, but I'll just say board rule on teacher relationship. Because I believe it's drafted and ready for the board in March. It hasn't gone to them yet, so to my knowledge, unless it went last month, but I'm pretty sure we haven't taken it yet. So there's still opportunity for feedback. So if there's something you see in there and you're like, tell me more about, or oh, this might need to be rethought, this is the time to do that. Even if it's gotten to the board, it can go to so it goes to committee first, a small group, and then it goes to full board. If we need to bring a proposed draft to the full board, we can do that, or pull it back to committee with some recommendations. So that one, basically we should be done with all our licensing rules, at least to committee in March. We're doing some cleanup on all the rules of just things that, like I talked about with 303 and 304 and 301, around like the number of years and things. 304, which is the teacher preparation rule, we're updating that to include the high leverage practices, to include the teacher literacy competencies. We worked with higher education and districts and charters to develop what should an elementary or early childhood teacher come out with in literacy, and what are those competencies, and to what level do they need to demonstrate the competency? Is it just a knowledge? Is it application? Or is it truly demonstrating it in a classroom with children? And so we've built out this kind of competency set of standards that the higher education institutions will be required to teach in their teacher preparation programs. They are asking higher ed, like, where's the math ones? So math is likely to follow next, but right now we've only built literacy to be really clear about what is the minimum learning that should be happening. It still gives flexibility to higher education to adjust, but it allows us to say, here's the things we know matter. And they've been really great to kind of do that as well. We were surprised. We were just going to put them out as encouragement. And they're like, nope, go ahead and put them in the rule. I'm like, okay. So, which has been really great to see. Higher education's been very supportive of advancing their work too. So hopefully in future years, you'll have less work of having to train people on literacy knowledge than maybe you have right now as your elementary teachers come in. Okay, we only have 15 minutes left. Not enough time to really get into your needs. I was anticipating more needs time than that. But if there, what I might do is the people on this side of the room, if you'll get together and talk about what would be your top 3 things you would like this group to kind of either get supported or do in this group as part of our work together in the next 6 to 12 months. And then you guys get together and kind of share similar, and then we'll share out. Those of you online, if you, I'll mute you here, and then you guys can discuss on the online component, and then when we come back, if a couple of you want to share out some high points, or you guys can be typing in the chat box if you don't want to use your mic, some ideas of how we can do it. We all are getting excited about that. So go ahead and I'll mute the online folks so you guys can talk without us hearing you, and then those in the room can chat as well. Do that.
Because we.
It's like, please do your job.
In a nice, sweet way. Think about this month.
Remember?
Yes, no, I get it. Well, it's so funny because don't you feel like sometimes they bristle at too much structure and then like give me structure.
Every month we give them an idea. Here,
try this.
Yes. I'm trying to do the same thing, like tip sheets.
I am
make it
happy
all
to add you to
technical.
some list. There's so many people not on the list, so I found all kinds of email lists, but I'm just gonna send something.
I just can't see the priorities are.
Got you on the list. Well, let's get,
I've put it on there a million.
I'm gonna get you on
on
that. You're gonna be there. So what school
Those
district
are
are you part of?
12 mentor modules. So I would say, like, for everyone, just that training. And right, and getting that
I'm just
out.
making up names now.
There was a decline.
Okay, so this one you are
How
on,
things change
okay, it
for
looks
me.
like, so is that
No,
you?
so no, I'm J Man's.
Oh, that's fine. Like that?
J
Sorry, I'm used to my genie.
E A N N.
I'm just
Zio.
because I still have, I haven't done.
We dump stuff, but.
Does it start again tomorrow?
Friday and Saturday.
Are we staying at the hotel?
I sent her the first email that had all that information that we got.
At least your email is to it.
And we have another.
Oh, great.
Well, the worst part is.
Happy to add. This is not an exclusive list.
Jenna needs to stay, I mean.
Yeah, I know, Jenna will. So, but she's been talking
Not
to
Friday
Jenna.
morning, but I don't know if you're on this. You did a personal with her last night, cause she.
Okay.
It's Debbie Bird.
With a Y?
It's also educating on
Yeah,
his.
there's just so many people there. There's nowhere to
You're
park.
supposed to be there for that.
Well, the state teachers are
I
gonna.
like it. I appreciate the consistency. Yep,
They
thank
really
you.
wanted to. I could be there at 7.
I guess we could go up early and get a good parking spot and hang out at.
She said 9 to 4. Anyway, so mentors, it's a mixed group, so.
Versus coaching.
Gotta be separated out a little.
Coaching piece in the. Teachers.
Yeah, it's kind of like.
Hey, Jennifer,
The difference.
can you hear me, Jennifer?
Right, well, and some
they
districts
can.
use it the
Yeah.
same way.
Yeah.
Like,
In all our,
Oh, right?
yeah, in all the stuff that's coming.
There's a lot of coaching stuff that's been
Tons of
dumped
coaching
in.
stuff, and I think
Which is
our directive
good,
was mentoring.
And I think we need to be really mentors. Yours aren't.
Ours aren't.
Ours aren't. And to think of them more as delve that deeply.
Yeah.
So that's, we should bring that up on.
There's usually assignments where the school year begins, and they're with their assignments. Their assignments the year long,
Right.
whereas coaching is more of a cyclical piece.
And that's what I was like, coaches are really-
Ours don't either.
because they're full release.
Yeah.
Or, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, they
Yeah,
are.
some, yeah.
So was
Washington County
Yeah.
does it too. And so we've got 3 people on our team that are way in coaching. Stuff that I'm going.
Fit. And I think we just need to. But
That's what we
That's
gotta
what
do.
it is.
the minimum.
And they're not
If
full release, they
people wanna-
don't have the time.
No.
And if districts wanna take it farther, they can.
Push back
Yeah.
and say, we can't adequate to do this. But
Yeah.
you can always build.
And I think
in your own
districts
LEA.
that matters, they can add that to their component, like they can add that.
Well, in this case, already done the coaching.
It's just an endorsement. It's, yeah, it's just
They can make their
guidelines
own
for,
modules.
it's guidelines for how you can get
And if you have
endorsed.
both, you can decide. No, yeah, but that's a good thing to, I think, realize that this is different. Okay, what else?
I know one of ours is. Communicate
what means to other people you blog. We tried doing a podcast, but that's successful.
So are you guys, okay, so here's another thing. I'm technically not in charge of teachers, but there's not a lot happening. So we're working with teaching and learning. So it doesn't come out of a different. That's a good, how do we get?
Or maybe just induction pieces, like what are other districts doing? Yeah.
I'm in a charter school, so it's all me. I'm just a full-time mentor and instructional coach, and that's it. And then,
Where are you from?
yeah, no, Webster Academy.
Oh, okay.
So, and we have very low turnover now, so most of my teachers are through.
Oh, that's nice.
So it's not as much, but I still have some. So most of my time now is going more into the coaching aspect because they're kind of past that needing the mentoring component. But yeah.
So I know that Jeannie said she was working. Yeah, I have a question. So another thing that Jeannie was working on was in the induction
The program.
with.
I can tell you more about that. Yeah, so we are partnering with the NTC to do that work. So they're going to help us develop a model induction program that then we can share with you all to develop your own, but at least you'll have a model. And NTC, if with future funds, this year is just to get the model kind of done. And a following year would be to pilot that in a couple of LEAs so we can kind of learn from our own, like, this looks great, sounds great on paper, but what are the true implications of the local setting? And that might be different depending on your local setting, but there might be some things to be learned if we do 2 or 3 pilot centers to be like, okay, everybody had the same challenge versus this rural area had this challenge, this charter had this challenge, and a Salt Lake district had this challenge, and so some pieces that I need to check on it, but we have the sole source in with NTC and have been working on the contract to kind of get them doing that work. So hopefully in the fall we'll have something related to that space.
Logan and I were gonna try to go to. It's in February. Okay. So we'll miss this one, but then there's one.
Yeah, so NTC is gonna be our partner on that one.
Okay, great. So see, look, right on. What's the development?
That's true.
I mean, it seems like these needs will be.
Yes, I know.
All right, we're gonna come back together. Just go ahead and wrap up your conversations. Have a spokesperson who might be willing to share out.
Okay.
We're gonna come back together, people online. Turn on the sound.
My chair is so noisy.
All right, thank you for indulging me today. You don't know me from Adam, and I appreciate your participation and willingness to just dive in with me today. So let's go ahead and kind of share out. There were some comments online about the role of a coach versus a mentor, and when you have to serve in both roles and how complicated that could be was probably the big idea that came out. The other is when your administrator is not available to do some of the role that they're supposed to play, how do we serve the teachers adequately? And so definitely some pieces that one of the questions that came out for you all to know is the model induction program work. We have decided to partner with the National Teacher Center to help us develop the model induction program that we are required to produce for you by rule. And so we're working to just finalize their contract and begin that development of at least getting the module or the model induction program kind of laid out. A future step would be then to pilot that induction program in some willing LEAs places to see what we can learn from that and then refine the induction program as needed. Ultimately, the model induction program is just to meant to be a support to LEAs, not a forced, you don't have to use our model. But the NTC is probably one of the better places to go through for that kind of work. And so they've decided or agreed to partner with us. We're just working on the contract negotiations at this point. So hopefully, I think our timeline is in the fall. We would have something available that then we can ultimately look at piloting moving forward. So just another update that you all might want to know. There's a lot going on in this space. And so things are coming at you kind of wild and crazy. How about, let's start with my group on the left. Anything that you want to share that you would like to be considered for prioritization for things for this group to attend to or for me to help support you in?
We'll be so honest.
Yes.
We were not on task.
We're not to ask, it's okay.
It
You must just have great confidence that I will meet your needs.
was very productive.
Okay. Anything you want the group to think about?
Mostly the policies is our biggest.
Okay, and I've got that down for an agenda item for next time. And when you talk policies, do you want to have time to review and discuss the policies? Do you want just to get a curation of them and do your own thing? What would be best? Okay, so we'll curate in advance and then I'll have those all shared in a Google Drive and then we can kind of dig into them with some intention.
Perfect.
How about this side of the room?
Mostly what you just said, but so our three, I mean, with the new licensing coming out, obviously updates on that, but the mentor training modules, competencies, we talked about those, and rolling those out and answering questions, and then mentoring versus coaching, the differences and similarities, and induction programs and pieces, so it aligns with what you just said.
Perfect. Well, at least we're on the right track. And I think from the mentoring versus coaching, have you guys seen our document for the instructional coaching endorsement that we released? So we've released one that's a competency-based endorsement to some level. There is some coursework, but a lot of it is competency-oriented. And going through that, we figured once we had coaching down, we can then look at coaching and see what's different and the same for mentoring. And so maybe this group could actually work on that, is taking what we've developed from coaching and then, and maybe it's just a work group from this subset that we can bring for the whole group to review, but to then further define, okay, what is a mentor then? What's a teacher leader? Like there's a lot of these different roles that we all have, but they've never been clearly defined, or what are the competencies to be successful in those roles? And so instructional coaching is where we started thinking, okay, if I'm an instructional coach, here are the things. Then it'll be easier to define some of these other roles once we have that kind of in place. So that might be something we can also look at, is just even defining what the differences are and helping our staff that serve in both roles.
Right.
No, or the people that are solely serving in one role, truly what is the meat of that role. Because our coaching, we pulled a stakeholder group together on the coaching, and we came to consensus, which I was really surprised, because each LEA runs coaching a little bit differently, but the skills, knowledge, and dispositions they want in a coach were very similar and very connected. And so it was actually pretty easy to do with those groups. And that would be something maybe a work group could work on in this group, and then we could bring it to the larger group here. So some future thoughts around that. Online, is there anything else that you would request that you want to chime in or type in the chat box before we wrap up for today? I'm an English language learner teacher, so I take long periods of silence with comfort. You can imagine my rate of speech is not super helpful for an English learner, so I've learned to at least extend my wait time. Okay, so it looks like we're good. I will take, I started kind of prepping the follow-up email, so you will see something from me. My trick is who is on what list. It's probably my biggest issue at this point. So if you were on today and you want to continue being on the list, please email me. I know that sounds horrible, and I don't look forward to as many emails as that's requesting, but I really don't know who you are and who to want to be harassed versus all of the emails I sent out yesterday to a bunch of different people to say, hey, not sure what list I should be working from because I found 2 or 3 lists, and whether you're even still in the role or this is your job or not, I don't want to keep emailing all of those lists. I just want to create one. So I took somebody, was it you? No, Yvonne, I think, sent me a list of here's the old list. And so I took that and had to delete all the cute carrots and the commas to make it. And so I have our assistant taking all those names and putting it in the list. If you end up hearing from a colleague, like, why am I on this list? I found their name. It's fine. Anyone can come off the list at any time, but we will make a list moving forward. So if you have not, I would just email me to confirm. My Twilla folks, you're good. We took care of you today. If you want to stay for a second, I'd be happy just to check and make sure you're on the list. And those online, just email me. I will type my email back in the chat box. I just want to make sure that you don't get dropped off, and that if you don't get something from me by the end of the week, you have been dropped from the list. So email me and I'll be happy to add you. This is not an inclusive group. I am happy to have whoever is interested in the content be interested in the content. So my curriculum director group is like 300 people. There's not 300 curriculum directors, but I don't really care who gets my emails. I don't email a lot. I will warn you that I am about less is more. When I email you, it's because I really need you to know something, or it's a training is coming up. Which reminds me, when is the next one of these scheduled for? May. If you guys don't mind, May 12th, I know I'm out of town, so we won't be having it that day.
Yeah, it's on May 12th is what it is.
Okay, I'm gonna have to reschedule. Is May a good time for you all?
That's whatever.
It's never good. May is just that end of year, like hustle bustle that sometimes is good and sometimes not super helpful. Would April be better? I am flexible.
I think May would be good, because maybe more
be further
information
along.
will be, yes.
I think that's smart as well. So we'll plan for May. I'll send you out when I can do it. Probably is more likely for us. It seemed like today was going to be a more full time period. What is your usual meeting period of time? Yeah, after 2:00, people fade real fast in my experience. So just personal.
Last meeting, she talked about going half the time too, instead of full
Time. And I don't start meetings before 9. As you noticed today, those are in the room. I have a child that I take to school, and so getting here before 8:30 is a challenge. So 9:00, just know that will most likely be your start time. But I will send a next meeting.
Traffic's better.
Right, it gives you a little more, and depending on how far you're driving from, you don't get up as early in the morning, so it's not all about me, I promise, but I know my abilities, and 8:30 was not happening. As those of you in the room noticed, I was like, I'm here at 8:30, but that was quite the struggle. So, okay, I will schedule a new date. I apologize, I know I'm out of town from May 11th to the 14th for a conference, so we'll schedule something around that time, and if you can't come, I poorly didn't do it today, but I generally record my meetings so that you can watch them at a different time. All of your colleagues who didn't join us today, sad day for them. They missed a very critical meeting. I appreciate you coming in and coming down and being here today. We'll move forward with the work, whether it's me or Jeannie. Know your needs and wants will be heard, and we'll move forward, and I'll keep you up to date as things happen. If you have questions along the way between now and May, just email me. I'm super responsive. If you don't hear from me within 24 to 48 hours, something happened to your email. I don't take longer than that to respond. It's a personal need of mine to meet people's requests for information, because I have an expectation that when I send an email, someone will respond. And so I try to model that through my own practice. So if you don't hear from me after 48 hours, email me again. It either got accidentally deleted. Sometimes it goes in my junk mail for no good reason. There's like no cause or reason for why some ends in the junk mail. So it's most likely that. Usually the second email will come through, like, did you get my email? No. I truly don't encourage it. So feel free to reach out, as I'll be your contact at least for now, and hopefully I look forward to this group. Mentoring is one of those spaces that we need more of, and hopefully this engagement survey will actually help us to get more movement towards enhancing mentoring, because when teachers say we need support, that is through mentoring and coaching, and we don't have a lot of funds that are dedicated to that space. And so if we're going to increase supports, we all think it's about money, and money is part of it, but when you really get down to these surveys, money is not the be-all that we pretend it is. It would help, but it would not keep people who are frustrated in their jobs just because they're making enough money. They need to feel supported in their work, and so that's what you all do on a daily basis, and I appreciate that. So I will send up a follow-up email either today or tomorrow with what I can, and then if there's things that are like I have to get like the list of LEAs, and that's gonna take more time. I'll just tell you that will be coming as soon as I get it, but I don't wanna hold up on all the information. So I'll send you the date, time, location of the meeting and all of that, as well as action items. Each of you has one action item, which is to pull your policies together and send them to me, and I'll drop them in a Google Drive for us to share between now and our next meeting. Jana, you have an additional action item that is in the email, and I include the top 5 HLPs in the email, so you'll have access to those as well as you kind of inform your own work. Anything else you would like to request of me?
To clarify, those of us in the meeting today, do we need to send an email to you? Would you like us to send an email?
Just stop by on your way out and we can check to see if you're on my list.
Okay.
You don't have to send, I'd be happy to just take care of that right now.
Okay.
So, all right, we are past our time. I'm trying to respect people's time, so go ahead and leave and we'll see you in May. And feel free to follow up with any questions you have.
Should we be praying about Jeannie? Like, should we be praying for her?
She's
that
just,
too much to ask?
Jeannie's been sick for a while, it just came down to more of a head at this point, and so I think in the long term she'll be okay, but from a just work perspective, it was not going to continue working at this point, so we're not quite sure. We'll know more at the end of this week where we're headed, so I'll keep you up to date if there are needs for prayers. Always for anyone, like we want them to be happy and healthy and all of those things, and it was definitely unexpected, the timing, so thank you for bearing with me today, dealing with me as your current level of support. So, yeah.
At the Capitol.
9 at the Capitol, B110. And I'm working on the hotel confirmations, like at least sending that out. As far as I know, the hotels are booked, and you should just be able to say your name, and I'll get more of a confirmation number, so you can be like, oh no, I have a room, in case it comes up.
So I just wanted to check.
Yeah, a list, you just never know what's on the list.
It'll be easier.
Very well organized. Okay, so I've got Angela.
Okay, so she's the boss, but I'm the one that's over mentoring.
You actually do the work.
Yes.
I will send it to her continued, but
Okay.
what else?
Question.
Well, I'll see you guys on Friday.
Thanks for the cute ideas.
All right, Elizabeth, it's lovely to meet you. Thank you for hanging in there with me today. All right.
Awesome. Thanks for coming in.
Or with Jordan.
I've heard you have great mentoring modules.
Wait, our ladies here do a great job.
Okay, last name?
Rebecca, or Smith and then Rebecca. Rebecca dot Smith
Doesn't want to get out there.
at jordandistrict.org.
We're all set, thank you, appreciate it.
Our names on it, will you just?
It would probably be good for the two of you to also be on there.
I emailed you and said to add me, but.
Perfect, we can do that, not a problem.
Different fisher.
Fisher with a normal fisher?
Yep.
Okay.
I sent you.
All right. And then it's Deborah.Fisher at Jordan. Okay, I got you.
Okay.
Oh, wait.
Oh, wait,
ERA.
it's probably
I spelled
Debbie,
it.
Debbie dot Fisher.
Good to know. If it bounces back, I'll try some different ways.
Yeah.
Jennifer, do you know, we're part of that group doing the modules.
Oh, my Friday, Saturday.
Yeah.
Do you know hotel wise, I have to like along my 1-year-old with me. Do you know, are we booked for tomorrow night too?
Thursday and Friday night.
Thursday and Friday.
Okay, that's
And
what I
I'll send out
just,
confirmations. I'm asking Timothy, Jeannie's assistant, to give me that, because I was like, I'm sure somebody has it. I know they've been done, I want to give you confirmation number so you feel confident about it.
yeah, we were just curious, cause I was like, do I need to lug him down here tomorrow night, or
You can bring them.
is my husband gonna have to figure it out Friday? So,
The good times of having wee ones, huh?
yeah. Sorry that I'm coughing all over everyone.
No, you poor thing. It's that season for it. So.
Around.
The review for Jeannie. Jeannie is just out ill indefinitely, for those of you online that came in late. So we're not quite sure. Basically, I'm planning on just taking things over as long as need be, either until Jeannie comes back or if Jeannie decides to permanently leave till we find a replacement, and even then there'll be a transition. So we are hopeful for Jeannie's return, but if that doesn't happen, hopefully you feel like you're in somewhat capable hands here today. And if not, I'm sorry, I'll keep trying. Have a good day. Hey, how are you?
Good.
Excellent.
To me, she deals.
Oh, okay. Well, let's find out who would have your access.
Thanks for using WebEx. Visit our website at www.webex.com.
Her family,
that, informed me of the change in the venue today, and.
Well, I'm so glad you got the
Oh, well,
details.
yeah, me too.
I was like, let's get you on the list as well then, because you obviously are not getting.
She's just so high stress, so high stress.
Is it Miriam?
Oh, it's done.
Oh, you're doing it in order the way I wanted it.
Okay.
You're awesome. Miriam. Okay, and then,
Fun. And then in letter M.
okay,
At
Really worried for her.
at least get you on my official list.
Do you want me to send you an email? I'd be happy to be on.
Make a little note.
Okay. Absolutely.
Appreciate that. What's your role in Grant? No, this is not your only thing, right?
We should try a mentor coordinator.
Okay.
And